I'm not even going to say TikTok time to rock, guys, because this is some messed up stuff. AP, you heard of these grooming gangs? Oh, I got to turn up my mic because I was just on StreamYard and it auto quiets me.
Yeah, I have heard of the inquiry. I haven't gone through it yet.
What should we call it? Inquiry or inquiry? Both are correct pronunciations.
I think we should just call it inquiry because it sounds better.
Yeah, inquiry I think is the main pronunciation, but inquiry just sounds better.
Yeah.
Anyway, this has been going on a while, guys. This just came out today. Someone just sent it to me like maybe 2 hours ago or something like that, and so I read a little bit of it. It's pretty bad, pretty messed up stuff. That and like this is a long report, guys. It's a long report. They have tons and tons and uh, tons of stories in there. Interviews with the victims and then summaries of what was found. Um, Wait. Oh no, someone said sound's not working, but other people said sound's working for him. Okay, guys, if sound's not working for you for some reason, just refresh your page or something like that. It's working for everyone else. So anyway, I read some. I read some of it, and it was saying this has been going on since the 1950s. Since the 1950s. And anyway, it's a lot of stuff we're familiar with from over the years, but it's really bad. So they estimate 250,000 girls as the minimum. They think it's probably significantly higher than that. Anyway, pretty creepy stuff going on in the UK. Glad someone's finally. You know what sucks? It's
Yes.
like, well, this is true right here. Now you know why we love Tommy Robinson. Yes, that is a good point. Tommy was calling this out a long time ago. Matter of fact, I remember watching Tommy. Tommy said that when he's in school, like middle school or high school or whatever, he said there were the girls who were going out to the cars with the Pakistani guys, and they just thought the girls were, you know, dirty girls, naughty girls, and stuff like that. He didn't know about the process of grooming, that they actually pick these girls and can spend weeks or months grooming them and so on. So this isn't just girls deciding to go out and do naughty things. They have an entire process for figuring out which girls are vulnerable and then grooming them and then doing whatever they want. And it was basically all over the place, basically all over the country. I think they said something like 40% of districts in the UK or something like that have had this going on. Have had it going on for a long time. So we're familiar with the general gist of these stories, guys. But we're going to read some of the report because they did a bunch of interviews. And anyway, what I said's messed up is when someone steps up and says, "Hey, they've been ignoring the grooming gangs and they're trying to cover up, so I'm going to be the one who solves this problem." You kind of don't know if it's someone who wants justice or someone who's using that for political purposes. But I have to say, I don't really care a whole lot as long as they're exposing the stuff. So whether they're doing it whether people are doing it for political points, to target their rivals, or they just genuinely care about all the young girls who are abused and the institutions in place that are supposed to protect young girls and that refuse because they're all worried about being called racist. Um, yep, glad it's being exposed. Glad it's being exposed. All right, man, you want to read some of this?
Yeah, I want to point out one thing, which is that so the whole issue that there is a massive cover up and a massive grooming gang and rape gang problem going on in the UK. This has been talked about for a long time now. Unfortunately, for the longest time, people generally talked about it and talked about the fact that this is happening. And despite admissions from government and from authorities that there was a cover up and that this has been happening and that the people are right to question it, very little was done to actually bring the facts out. Very little was done to actually reveal everything that has been going on. Only these recent efforts have brought much more light and attention to it. Tommy Robinson has been leading the attempt, the struggle to make everything about this public. Political parties, Rupert Lowe, Restore Britain, have been at the front of pushing the government to really reveal everything. And now we have the first, I think, the beginning of the inquiry out now, and we're going to see a lot about what the victims have been going through and how this has been an organized grooming problem. And I think, as far as I have seen it, also the report describes case by case how it happened, how the victims were lured and groomed. Because I think an important issue that people need to understand is that some people say we shouldn't call it grooming, we should just call it rape gangs. I still think that calling it grooming gangs is important in a way because it points out very clearly what exactly these gangs and these groups have been doing. Yes, it is rape, but it is much more sinister than simply people going into alleys and snatching, unsuspecting women and raping them or anything like that. It is
Yeah, if you
it
just
is psychologically messed up.
yeah, when you call it grooming gang, that gives you an indication of their methodology. If you just
Yeah.
say rape gangs, yeah, to me that would sound like a gang of people going around just finding girls and dragging them into alleys and stuff like that. But nope, they had an entire system and a huge network all over the UK. They're transporting girls here and there. They're even if they find a special girl, they'd even take her to Muslim country to sell her off to someone there and so on. So anyway, seriously, seriously, seriously messed up stuff.
And one important aspect of it is also that the grooming gang inquiry um,
Yeah, you said inquiry a
actually
second ago, man.
actually honestly and directly goes into the problem of Islam. That is, I think, a very, very, very it's a very bold and very good thing. It
Hmm.
directly addresses Islam as a core issue. So we should be reading that and seeing what's up here.
Yep, and it's actually right there in the report. They're talking about the connection to Islamic beliefs and teachings. So
Mhm.
they actually didn't shy away from pointing out that this is connected to Islam because it definitely is. It definitely is.
Well, this inquiry is led by Rupert Lowe, who is now the leader of Restore Britain, which is very hardline patriotic. We'll see how they will do in the next elections, but they are very popular among certain parts of the population, and that guy absolutely does not shy away from anything at all. He has been very, very open. The report already starts with him saying that we have an immigration problem and not a racism problem and all that. So it's going to be very, very blunt and very direct, and I'm all for it. We need that.
Someone said, "What will be done about it?" Someone up there needs to answer and pay for this mess. Oh, that would be a lot of people. But I think this is like the first step. And there was a call again. I just got this a couple hours ago, and I was live with Chris Claus when I got this when this was sent to me. So didn't get a chance to look into much. But I think they, matter of fact, let me check this. I think they basically sent a list of cases to re-examine. In other words, what you find out over and over again from the stories is how police and social workers, prosecutors, none of them wanted to touch this, so they just sweep it under the rug. So basically, a list of the victims and so has been resubmitted saying you're going to go reinvestigate these crimes with people actually looking over your shoulder. And so in the course of this, the people who like signed off on these things, oh no, no crime here, nothing wrong here. Eh, those guys shouldn't just lose their jobs. They should go to prison too, depending on the severity of their neglect of the whole situation. We'll start reading as soon as AP gets back. What do you guys think about this stuff? Um, Hi, D Wood and Chair P. Uh, this is the fruit of socialism. Not quite. It's the fruit of not wanting to be called a name. Can you imagine that? Girl comes to you, you're a police officer. She says, "Hey, I've been raped by hundreds of guys. I want it to stop." And you're like, "Nope, can't do anything about that because they're a bunch of Pakistanis. And if I go around investigating a bunch of Pakistanis, they're going to call me racist and I'm going to lose my job." That's why you shouldn't have a job, right? That's why these guys shouldn't have jobs. Um, if you are that easy to manipulate, then you shouldn't be the person in charge of protecting people. All right.
Yes.
Ready to check this out, man?
Yes.
All right. Now, this report is long, 219 pages, ladies and gentlemen, 219 pages. We'll check out some of it. We could actually, man, we could go through the entire thing on multiple live streams and so on. So here we have it, guys. The Rape Gang Inquiry or Inquiry Report, depending on how
Let's say inquiry. It sounds better.
You literally said 8 minutes ago that inquiry sounds better.
I changed my mind. Let's say inquiry.
We'll probably switch back and forth. All right, so guys, here we have the contents, acknowledgments, forward, introduction, executive summary. So we'll probably skip down to the executive summary. Executive summary, overview of crime. So we'll read the executive summary, overview of crimes, and then you've got a long section. Let's see how long. Victim testimony, and it's over 80 pages long, and then whistleblower testimony. So these would have been people who said, "Hey, I'm calling people out on this. Hey, there's something going on over here. There's a problem," and what would happen to them. Look at that, dude. They even have a section on the influence of Islam. That's in like the introduction or something like that, but looks like they've got, whoa, dude. Look at that. It starts on the influence of Islam section starts on page 116, and the next section starts on page 134. So they actually have a pretty. That's surprising because that's the opposite of what you'd expect. You'd expect, given the history of the UK, you'd expect them to say, "Okay, there's a problem, and yeah, it's got it's got something to do with a lot of Pakistani guys, but nothing to do with Islam." Now they've got an entire section on how this is connected to Islam. We have impact on survivors, conclusions, recommendations. So, yeah, guys, as far as this live stream goes, probably check out the executive summary, the overview, and read some of the stories from the victims, and then we'll decide if we want to keep reading because. Guys, pretty important issue. So make sure you read this. I put the link in the description for anyone who wants to read the entire report. Conclusions, recommendations, legislative response, all frontline response. Concluding message from Rupert Lowe. Non-hearing victim testimony, survivor quotations, institutional failures, list of areas gangs are known to have operated. All right. Acknowledgements, not interested here. Forward. Then you got a quote from Rupert Lowe there. Britain doesn't have a racism problem, it has an immigration problem.
Yes. Correct. Correct.
The
Very
world,
correct.
we got a quote from Einstein. The world is a dangerous place to live, not because of the people who are evil, but because of the people who don't do anything about it. And then we have man is the cruelest animal from AP's hero, Friedrich Nietzsche.
My past hero.
What? Not your hero anymore?
No. Remember how I used to be such a huge fan of Nietzsche? Man?
Yeah, it was pretty stupid. We've talked
I mean, I
about him
still
before.
love him, but I still love the guy's thinking and all, but I just cannot agree with most of his conclusions anymore. So
Yeah, I was always like, he's like, seems like a genius on certain points, and like, how is he spotting this stuff when no one else is? And seems like a complete moron in other areas. I don't know.
no, I think he was a proper. I think he was absolutely a genius, and he thought about
And
things and
and partly insane.
yes, and he was also insane. So yeah.
All right.
Anyway,
Didn't know if I wanted to read the introduction here, but it's under 2 pages, so we'll go ahead and check it out. The rape gang inquiry has now concluded the first phase of its work. That's where I got it from. So this is the first step, guys. It's going to continue, hopefully. It was established to examine one of the most horrendous scandals in the long history of our country: the systematic targeting of vulnerable girls, overwhelmingly white British, by predominantly Muslim Pakistani gangs across towns and cities up and down the nation. The evidence presented throughout the hearings confirmed what had long been known but repeatedly denied by many in the political class. The inquiry welcomed girls, boys, men, and women of all races and religions to testify to their experiences to gain a complete picture of the rape gang phenomenon. The Casey report of 2025 stated that disproportionate numbers of men from Asian... I'd be so ticked off if I was like Chinese or something like that. Asian ethnic backgrounds were among the suspects for group-based child sexual exploitation. Baroness Casey quoted local reports showing that a significant proportion of those convicted were of Pakistani and or Muslim heritage. Shocker. The crimes stretch back generations. Generations, guys. The rape gang inquiry was necessary because the state and its institutions have failed catastrophically over decades. Police, social services, schools, the NHS, licensing authorities, and governments allowed these gangs to operate with impunity. There was a demonstrable lack of political will to confront them. The Labour Party initially refused a public inquiry altogether, only relenting under considerable pressure. It will be many years before this inquiry is complete. Notice, guys, so this is an ongoing thing. This is basically the first installment. It will be many years before this inquiry is complete, and there is no guarantee that it will adequately address the politically sensitive, ethno-religious nature of the phenomenon. Despite now pushing for an inquiry in opposition, when in government, the Conservative Party did very little. The rape gang inquiry was survivor-led. Every day the panel met. The panel sat with Sammy Woodhouse. She's on X, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Every day the panel sat with Sammy Woodhouse, a survivor turned activist herself, alongside a variety of experts who attended whenever their specialist subject formed the focus of our efforts to get to the truth.
The thing about Sammy Woodhouse is that she's not just a commentator; she's actually a victim herself.
Mm-hmm.
She was groomed when she was in her early teens, which is how she became so outspoken about this whole issue, and she's now one of the leading voices to speak about grooming gangs.
And just want to say, I mean, it sucks that so many girls had to go through this, but those who basically grew up and decided to fight back, hats off to them. Total legend status for, you basically grow up, you know what you've been through, and you're like, I want to stop this from happening to other people. We examined distinct areas of the scandal in turn so that a maximally full picture could be established. Parents and carers described their experiences. This gets rough, guys. Instances of pregnancy, abortion, and children born of rape were laid bare. Whistleblowers who had previously been ignored gave evidence. Policing and justice failures were documented. Social care, NHS services, including sexual health and mental health, education, taxi licensing, demographic trends, cultural and social issues, and ideological obstructions to justice were all scrutinized without restriction. Don't underestimate the importance of that without restriction part, because every other time they did anything, they looked into this in any way, there were massive restrictions on them and what they could say and how they could report things. Nothing was off the table. Misguided political correctness and cultural sensitivities played no part in the proceedings. The promise made to every donor was honored in full. The truth was pursued and justice was our only objective. Survivors were finally given the platform they had been denied for so long and were central to the inquiry. The full scale and nature of the crimes can now be placed on the public record. The true horror of what took place is no longer hidden. Although the inquiry lacked statutory powers, the response was overwhelming. Politicians, whistleblowers, experts, family members, and many others came forward. Those few in prominent positions who declined to give evidence did so knowing their refusal would be noted. Oh, so like, hey, you know something and you're in an important position and you're refusing? Your reluctance to speak will be noted. This report sets out findings and makes clear recommendations for how the problem of rape gangs can be eradicated. The country now knows the full truth. The country has been given the basis for justice. The country has the roadmap to ensure these crimes never happen again. You imagine this, again, it's been going on since the 1950s. You're talking 70 years, guys, and they're finally at least starting the process of doing something about it. All right, ready? We've got the executive summary here. Executive summary. The rape gang inquiry examined the systematic targeting of vulnerable girls, overwhelmingly white British, by predominantly Muslim Pakistani gangs across towns and cities throughout the United Kingdom. The evidence put to the inquiry confirms that this scandal constitutes one of the most horrendous failures in the history of the country. Organized networks of perpetrators built coordinated operations that transported victims between locations, supplied them with drugs and alcohol, recorded abuse for distribution and blackmail, and passed girls between multiple adult men. These crimes have been committed for decades, since the 1950s, by Pakistanis in particular, and have affected every region of our nation. The scale of the crimes committed is staggering. It has been previously established that, at the very least, 250,000 young white girls have been subjected to repeated rape, gang rape, trafficking, torture, pregnancy, forced Islamic conversion, and lifelong trauma. The true number is probably higher. The perpetrators bear primary responsibility, yet the institutional failures that enabled them for decades must also be confronted. In court records and official inquiries, around 87% of those convicted in these group-based child sexual exploitation cases bore distinctively Muslim names. 87%. I wonder if there's a connection. The vast majority of men involved in these gangs were not convicted. Dr. Taj Hargi, an imam with the Oxford Islamic Congregation, believes the true proportion of gang members who are Muslims to be around 95%. So around 95% of the Muslims in these grooming gangs, around 95% are Muslims. This figure far exceeds the Muslim share of the overall United Kingdom population, you think? The overwhelming majority of the rape gang networks consisted entirely of men from Muslim backgrounds, predominantly of Pakistani heritage, although smaller groups from Somali, Iranian, Syrian, Turkish, and other Muslim origins were also involved. That's interesting. So it's not just a Pakistani thing. It's in the UK. It's primarily a Pakistani thing, but they're pointing out Somali, Iranian, Syrian, Turkish, and other Muslim origins were involved. I wonder where they all got the same idea. The inquiry heard harrowing testimony from survivors and their families. The method used to groom children typically followed the same process. I don't know if they're doing this, but if they're not, they need to. They need to be training girls when they're little girls. Now you got to be careful what you're telling them when they're 6 and 7 and stuff like that. But you can get the general gist across of, hey, if guys ever approach you and want to start treating you very nicely and taking you places, do not trust them. And then as they get older, you warn them more and more about the methods, because these guys kept using the same method over and over again because no one stopped it. Girls as young as 11 were initially befriended by a young Muslim man. That was his job in the gang. Befriended by a young Muslim man who then treated the young child like an adult and would then start providing them with alcohol, drugs, and cigarettes. After a few months, the girls would then be collected from school gates, care homes, and streets in taxis. That made them feel really important. We're being picked up in taxis. Of course, the taxi drivers were in on it. What?
I want to point out one thing, which is for some reason, people never talk about the proportionality or about the overrepresentation or the per capita when it comes to these things. According to the information we have, over 80%, over 86%, and an estimated over 95% of perpetrators have Muslim names. Muslims are 6%. 6% of the UK population. If they are 6% of the UK population, but among the perpetrators of grooming gangs, over 87 or 95% of perpetrators are Muslims, that is a massive, absolutely massive overrepresentation, which means this is an almost exclusively Muslim problem. An almost exclusively Muslim problem. That would mean that the grooming gang or rape gang problem is almost exclusively a Muslim problem, which would mean if there were no Muslims, you probably wouldn't have a problem like grooming gangs or rape gangs.
School gates, care homes, and streets in taxis. They were taken to houses, flats, restaurants, and hotels where they were raped repeatedly by groups of men, tortured, filmed for blackmail, and told they were white trash or kuffar who merited punishment. Many became pregnant while still children. Some miscarried under trauma. Others endured coerced abortions, and some gave birth to children who were later removed by the state. We found that the same unspeakable crimes occurred in at least 149 local authority districts, close to 40% of all such districts across the United Kingdom. See page 14 for the map. Survivors described daily rapes, red rooms of extreme torture, trafficking between cities, and institutional disbelief that compounded their suffering. Some girls were even trafficked to the Middle East, where they would endure Islamic marriage. The demographic and cultural drivers are clear. Ooh, here we go. Demographic and cultural drivers are clear. Perpetrators from Pakistani, Muslim, and other Muslim backgrounds operated under an honor and shame-based clan code that treated non-Muslim girls, especially white working-class girls, as property available for sexual use. This pattern was reinforced by 8 theological and legal aspects of Islam.
Where did they get that idea from?
Yeah, I know. I've only been saying it for 15, 20 years now. And it's been in the Muslim sources for 14 centuries. Weird how it's so hard for people to catch on to. These include the doctrine of Muslim superiority, drawn from Quranic verses that position Muslims at the top with a duty to correct non-believers. The gang members' justification for their crimes can be found in the Islamic principles of loyalty and disavowal known as al-wala Al-Wala wal bara.
Well,
That's that loving and hating for the sake of Allah, right?
yeah.
Yeah. You have to hate the unbeliever. Well, how are you going to you get an 11-year-old girl that your religion convinces you to hate and despise? How are you going to treat her? It demands enmity towards non-Muslims. Yeah. The superiority of men over women. Forced marriage combined with the absence of any fixed minimum age of consent. Wow, they're bringing up the minimum, that there's no minimum age of consent. The perception of female sexuality as inherently dangerous, a system of sex slavery that authorizes sexual relations with non-Muslim captives, and a religiously sanctioned social hierarchy that subjugates conquered non-Muslims. These elements, these are all things I said in my videos years ago. These elements, filtered through clannish immigrant subcultures, provided religious justification that enabled the systematic rape and even slaughter of white British girls. Were Britain functioning effectively, these girls would have received considerable state protection. However, every one of our institutions failed them catastrophically. Police, what's up?
Nothing. Continue.
Police forces ignored repeated reports, criminalized victims instead of perpetrators, destroyed evidence, and allowed known rapists to walk free on bail. Social care services undermined protective parents. See that? The social care services would go after the parents, would stop the parents from intervening. Placed children in trafficking hubs inside children's homes. Placed children in trafficking hubs inside children's homes. Closed cases despite clear indicators of exploitation, and retaliated against whistleblowers. The NHS recorded genital injuries, multiple sexually transmitted infections in children as young as 13, pregnancies caused by rape and suicide attempts, yet discharge victims back to their abusers without safeguarding referrals or trauma care. Schools observed older men collecting girls at the gates, heard disclosures of rape on school premises, and responded by excluding victims rather than protecting them. Taxi licensing authorities renewed permits for drivers who formed the logistical backbone of the networks and collapsed in the face of organized protests when basic safety measures were proposed. Political failure lies at the heart of the scandal. Successive governments lacked the will to confront the ethnic and religious patterns. The Labour Party bears particular responsibility. It initially refused a public inquiry and only relented under pressure by ordering a process viewed with widespread skepticism. Labour-dominated councils and MPs were briefed on the gangs long ago, yet later denied knowledge. The party prioritized electoral reliance on Muslim voting blocs and then blocked or watered down inquiries, suppressed ethnicity data, and framed legitimate concerns as far-right agitation. You catching that, guys? The politicians depend on the Muslim votes in these places. So what do? Hey, guys, don't worry. We're being forced to do something, but we'll protect you guys. Don't worry. When finally forced to act, the Labour government produced a national inquiry whose tightly drawn terms of reference deliberately excluded systematic examination of the demographic, cultural, and religious drivers, which are kind of the main features that need to be investigated. The Conservative Party, while in government, continued with Labour's approach and failed to impose mandatory ethnicity recording or launch a full statutory inquiry, despite clear evidence from Rotherham and elsewhere. Scottish political parties have refused a dedicated inquiry. Wow, Scottish. It's weird. Until this nonsense, I always thought of the Scottish as like super tough guys. Anyway.
That's long in the past.
Yeah, you sit there and you watch Braveheart and you're like, these guys aren't going to put up with anything, man. They're not going to put up with any of this stuff. Wrong. Scottish political parties have refused a dedicated inquiry and failed to record offender ethnicity. Political correctness, fear of accusations of racism, and fear of losing electoral support from certain demographics have taken precedence over the protection of British children. Whistleblowers, parents, and survivors who came forward showed extraordinary courage despite having been met in the past with disbelief and intimidation. The perpetrators operated with impunity because the state enabled them. The evidence now demands immediate and decisive action to eradicate the problem, deliver justice for the victims, and ensure these abhorrent crimes are eradicated from our shores. We now have a clearer sense of the problem. There are a number of measures necessary to resolve them, up to and including considerable changes to our criminal justice system, the passage of legislation aimed at targeting specifically gang-based child sexual exploitation, and a great amount of institutional overhaul. You guys need to scrap everything and start over. Our detailed list of recommendations includes improved data recording on ethno-religious patterns among offenders, far stronger sentencing, a comprehensive deportation effort. What do you think about that, AP?
All for it. Deport, deport, deport. Deport, deport, deport. Wherever you can, deport.
Institutional accountability measures, multi-agency coordination, specialist training, enhanced safeguarding through greater family involvement, and closing the various gaps in British law through which so many victims fell. Following the publication of this report, we intend to release the full witness testimonies, gather additional survivor accounts, identify those responsible in Parliament, and begin civil and private legal actions to ensure maximal accountability. I wasn't even thinking about that. Civil and private legal actions. So if someone's basically, well, obviously the people who are rapists and so on, but if like police were destroying evidence and stuff like that, well, they need to be locked up for that sort of thing. But private legal actions, there you're just talking about suing people. Like, hey, I reported this to you, social worker. You did nothing for years. I'm suing you. You're going to be paying me for the rest of your life. That is a good start. To ensure maximal accountability. Okay, look, we got the overview of crimes here. Okay, let's read it. Overview of crimes. Rape gangs have exploited children systematically across every region of the United Kingdom for decades. The independent chair of the Center for Excellence for Children's Care and Protection, Alexis J., has identified the 1970s as the decade when immigrant rape gangs first began tormenting the girls of Britain. However, the British newspaper archive reveals that the first recorded case of specifically Pakistani rape gangs dates back to 1955, so they're aware of it. Way back in 1955. That's the year Marty McFly went to in Back to the Future. That's a long time ago. When 4 Bradford-based Pakistanis were charged with raping a 15-year-old girl from Middlesbrough. This was soon after former colonial subjects from the subcontinent, as much as the Caribbean, became eligible to enter the United Kingdom in non-trivial numbers under the British Nationality Act, 1948. What began as singular and small-scale instances became systematic and industrial over time. So, basically, they start bringing Pakistanis in there in the 1950s, and oh, shocker, they start raping girls and forming a gang. These horrific crimes have only escalated in recent decades, especially following Tony Blair's 1997 victory and the start of orchestrated mass immigration. With greater numbers came greater opportunities for abuse. Perpetrators built, I guess if it's only, if it's only a few of you here and there who are gang rapists and so on, well, you're kind of easy to spot and go after legally. But if all of a sudden there's millions of you, and you've got a big voting block, and you've convinced the population that criticizing you in any way is racist, then you can get an entire system up and running. With greater numbers came greater opportunities for abuse. Perpetrators built organized networks that transported victims between towns and cities and passed girls between multiple adult men. In each of these areas, the same tactics were used. Girls as young as 11 were targeted with gifts, alcohol, and drugs, collected in taxis from school gates, care homes, and streets, and taken to houses, flats, restaurants, and hotels, and then raped repeatedly by groups of men, passed between perpetrators, trafficked across county lines, and in many cases, impregnated or forced into abortions. Most victims endured violence, were filmed for blackmail, or told they were white trash or kuffar who deserved punishment. The authorities at every level, including the police, social services, health services, schools, licensing bodies, and politicians, knew the patterns. They weren't ignorant, they knew it. Knew the patterns, possessed the intelligence, and still failed to protect the country's children. The evidence establishes that a national scandal of repeated rape, trafficking, torture, pregnancy, forced Islamic conversion, and lifelong trauma enabled by institutional denial, political calculation, and fear of the accusation of racism took place over decades. The incidents of criminal activities listed in this report are drawn from court records, official and unofficial inquiries across the country, and witness testimony provided to the inquiry. They confirm that this was never a series of isolated local failures. It was a coordinated nationwide pattern of organized child sexual exploitation that repeated in town after town, city after city, from the far north to the south coast. The same ethnic and religious profile of the perpetrators was documented throughout almost all of the witnesses who contacted the inquiry. On this issue of Pakistanis, Tommy Robinson pointed out, he said in some of these places, it'd be like 1 out of every 8 Pakistanis were actually involved in the rape gangs. Now you think, okay, well, 7 out of 8 weren't. Okay, but if that many people are involved, then he says everyone had to know about it. He said all the Pakistanis had to know about it, right? Even if you're not doing it. If all these people in your family, people all around you, friends, and so on, everyone knows it's going on. What's that mean? It means even the people who weren't involved, they knew it was going on. And did nothing to blow the whistle about any of this. What's that mean? Well, I'd view all of you as pretty darn suspicious, I have to say. And if any of you were not citizens or anything else like that, I would kick you out in a heartbeat. If I even thought you had it, even if I thought you just knew about this and said nothing. The scale of the rape gang phenomenon is endemic across the entirety of Britain. The 250,000 figure originates directly from a statement in the House of Lords by Lord Pearson of Rannoch on May 14, 2019. Do the government accept that if we extrapolate nationally the J report on Rotherham and other reports from Telford and Oxford, there appear to have been upwards of 250,000 young white girls raped in this country, very largely by Muslim men, usually several times a day for years. He added that this number is probably an underestimate. This extrapolation now has greater support due to further data that has been collected, derived from scaling the patterns documented in major inquiries. In other words, guys, they do a thorough investigation of one area. And then they say, okay, if that's the pattern there, and we've seen the pattern here, and we've done the numbers over here, but we know what's going on in all these other places. What do we think? What do we think the total numbers are? This extrapolation now has greater support due to further data. Rotherham, the J report in 2014, at least 1,400 girls abused between 1997 and 2013, with some updated estimates exceeding this. Perpetrators were overwhelmingly Pakistani Muslim men. Telford inquiry, 2022, more than 1,000 children, predominantly girls, over decades, again with the same perpetrator profile. National footprint. The grooming gang model has been confirmed in dozens of towns and cities. Our independent inquiry, led by Rupert Lowe, MP, has heard evidence demonstrating coordinated operations extending to all corners of the country in at least 149 local authority districts. When the Rotherham-Telford scale is applied across the documented national distribution, and multiplied by the extreme underreporting factor accepted by official reviews, the total reaches the 250,000 threshold as a bare minimum. We are far from grasping the full extent of grooming gang criminality in modern Britain. It is reasonable to assume that, since sexual abuse of all kinds tends to be underreported, that's always the case, guys. In other words, if a certain number, not even dealing with the grooming gangs, if a certain number of rapes are reported in an area, there's generally significantly more that aren't reported. So we are far from grasping the full extent of grooming gang criminality in modern Britain. It is reasonable to assume that since the sexual abuse of all kinds tends to be underreported, this is also true of grooming gangs. The Independent has reported that almost 19,000 children were identified as sexual exploitation victims in England in 1 year alone, despite the reluctance of state actors to name or tackle the problem of the rape gangs. After decades of abuse, victims must number in the hundreds of thousands. The full scale is not yet known. Every major review has emphasized that recorded statistics severely understate reality. Baroness Casey National Audit on Group-Based Child Sexual Exploitation and Abuse from 2025. The audit explicitly states that the scale, nature, and characteristics of group-based child sexual exploitation remain impossible to quantify, precisely due to inconsistent data collection and historical suppression. Independent inquiry into child sexual abuse and multiple local inquiries. It is simply not possible to know the scale because ethnicity, group offending, and historical cases were routinely unrecorded or shelved to protect community cohesion. Saying you can't even get correct numbers anymore because they were covering this stuff up the entire time, destroying evidence, ignoring things, sweeping things under the rug. Overleaf.
Cohesion.
Yeah. Community cohesion. You need community cohesion, and protecting a bunch of girls from being gang raped by these guys would ruin your community cohesion. Can you imagine, this is why people will always bring up Orwell and stuff like this, but you're just controlling people through little words and phrases and stuff like that to such an extent that the entire government and everyone else will let hundreds of thousands of girls be raped and gang raped, all because of words.
Doesn't this make British people, Western people, Christians, white people, doesn't this make your blood boil? Doesn't this make this whole report, everything that is being said here, doesn't this make your mind go to places that you don't want your mind to go? Doesn't this make you go to thoughts that you don't want to have, to things that are not acceptable to the public, to governments, to social media, or even to yourself? Doesn't this make you rage? Doesn't this absolutely make you almost lose control of your thoughts and your emotions? Doesn't it make your blood boil? Doesn't it make you want to go out and to do something? Doesn't it make you want to go out and take down a government and brutally punish everybody responsible for this?
And really make fun of Muhammad.
When will it be? When will the people of Britain, of this beautiful nation, who are unfortunately known to be very slow to anger, but to be very hard to stop once they are angry, when will it be enough for them to go out, to rise up, to fill the streets, and to not leave the streets until the problem is solved once and for all? When will it push people to say, we don't want to talk anymore? We want to solve the problem now, not later. We want to kick millions of people out. We want to lock thousands of people up. We want hundreds punished. When is it enough? When the when is it enough?
This is crazy stuff, man. Here's the thing. You've got tons of Muslims who weren't involved in any of this stuff. But if Islam, if the spread of Islam, if Islam entering your country causes you, causes you to stop caring about protecting young girls because of your reputation and the way people will manipulate you and call you racist and Islamophobes if you say anything, doesn't that kind of mean you shouldn't wouldn't want to be bringing Islam into your country? Right? It has effects on the entire population. It has effects on the government. We're not just talking about what it does to young girls. We're talking about it somehow affects the entire population and makes people, oh, better be quiet about that. Oh, better not protect that girl. Oh, better not say this. Oh, better not speak about that. Turns you into a nation of freaking cowards. Remember a few years ago we had George Floyd. George Floyd, police custody. He
Oh
dies.
yeah.
You get riots all over the place. Riots all over the place. 250,000 girls, at least, groomed, raped, gang
You have a
raped.
bloody drug addict who was going to die soon anyway. Be killed. To be fair, he was killed as a result of the actions of the officer in charge. But then again, he was also a drug addict, and it was these were contributing factors. And people went wild over that. People should be rioting.
Yeah, yeah, that's the
Result.
point. And it's like if you have even a protest, it's oh look at this these far right. Wait, what? You can't you can't object to 250,000 girls at least being raped and gang raped and pimped, and you can't object to Islam affecting your country in this way. You can't say anything about it, or you're far right extremists. So what are you saying? If far right extremists are the only ones that are allowed to care about girls, I would say there need to be more far right extremists, unless you want to acknowledge that other people can be concerned about this too, and stop labeling everyone far right extremists if they're concerned about what's going on with this rape and abuse of young girls, right? In other words, if you see someone protesting and say, "Hey, we need to stop the sexual exploitation of these girls," and someone goes, "Oh, you're far right," what are you saying? Are you saying, "Oh, that's the only possible explanation for why a person would have a problem with quarter of a million girls being raped, gang raped, drugged, pimped, all that stuff"? Really? Notice it's the exact same thing. It's controlling people with words. Well, people don't like being called racist. People don't like being called Islamophobe. People don't like being called far right. They don't like being called extremists. They don't like being called these things, and people back down from it. And this is the result when you back down from it. What's that mean? It means don't back down, guys. Don't back down from this. If someone's going to call you names, let them call you names all day long. People have been calling me names for a while. I'm fine with it. So you can be too. Let's see. Overleaf is a heat map that portrays the various locations in which the inquiry can be sure the rape gangs operated. It is likely that the true extent is far worse. Okay, so here's the map of where the rape gangs operate or have operated in at least 149 local authority districts across the United Kingdom. So, in the darker red, you have confirmed rape gang cases, like people being arrested and stuff like that. And in the lighter red, that's suspected. That's a lot of places, man. These were the rape gangs were doing their raping. Pretty crazy stuff, man. The scale, the tactics, the perpetrator profile, and the systemic inaction were almost always identical everywhere. Guys, can you imagine this? If people across the country in completely different cities are all using the exact same method, this means it's organized, it's taught, There are lessons being given. They have a plan, and they're all educating each other on what works and how to do it. And it's not just here's how you get an 11-year-old girl to start hanging out with you and stuff like that. It's not just that. It's how do you control the police? How do you control social workers? How do you do that? How do you do all this stuff? Organized, very well organized. The scale, the tactics, the perpetrator profile, and the systemic inaction were almost always identical everywhere. Britain did not face dozens of separate local scandals. It faced one national scandal that the state allowed to grow for decades. See, in London, now this is interesting because I've heard over the past couple of years, why wasn't it happening in London? Why wasn't it happening in London? Why is it all these other places? You got tons of Muslims in London. All right, let's see. London stands exposed as the epicenter of institutional denial in the grooming gang scandal. While northern towns faced public inquiries after the truth emerged, the capital maintained a wall of silence for years. The mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, has repeatedly insisted there were no grooming gangs operating in the city. I heard that too. As our inquiry heard from Susan Hall, leader of the Conservatives in the London Assembly, the rape gang phenomenon is in fact endemic within the capital. After challenging Khan about the presence of such gangs in London, Hall was inundated with calls from women and girls purporting to be victims of their predation. Khan describes evidence from whistleblowers as malicious and politically motivated. See, they're just doing this for political gains. He told the London Assembly that the problem was far more complex than in other parts of the country and that young people were being exploited through county lines rather than organized group-based child sexual exploitation. These statements were made despite the Metropolitan Police holding reports of young girls being plied with alcohol and drugs, then raped by groups of men in hotels and other locations across the capital. They knew it. Police had the reports. Mayor's denying it. Nope. Not here. That's only other places. A Daily Express investigation revealed that Khan had direct access to HM Inspectorate of Constabulary documents detailing exactly these patterns of offending. He read the files, yet continued to deny the existence of grooming gangs in public. Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp, MP, has accused Khan of facilitating a cover-up, and other politicians stated that both the mayor and the Metropolitan Police had been denying grooming gangs in London. Campaigners, including whistleblower Maggie Oliver and Chris Wilde, described the capital as the last bastion of denial and warned that the scale of abuse there was more catastrophic than elsewhere in the country. They're saying it was actually worse in London, but they had more people covering it up and more people of power covering it up. The evidence now emerging confirms their warnings. In October 2025, the Metropolitan Police announced a review of 9,000 child sexual exploitation cases. The National Crime Agency launched Operation Beaconport to examine thousands more files nationwide after initial assessments found human errors, missed lines of inquiry, and cases wrongly dropped. London.
Hey, I want to ask some questions.
What's up?
Actually, I'll ask him once you're done with that paragraph. Sorry, go ahead.
What? Okay.
Once you finish the paragraph, I'll ask the questions. Go ahead.
All right. London forms a significant part of this backlog. A former Metropolitan Police detective has described industrial-scale child prostitution and grooming in the capital, with authorities aware but opting for inaction due to a mixture of incompetence, laziness, and corruption. I finished the paragraph. Did you mean finish the whole section?
I just finished a section. There's not much left. I just
okay. London has the largest Muslim population in Britain. Well, then nothing could go wrong, right? Khan relies on significant electoral support from those communities. Yeah, if you start going against the Muslim population and exposing the rape. Now, just think about this, guys. Just think about this. If the Muslim population of London has a problem with exposing grooming gangs raping kids, I kind of have a problem with the whole population then,
Yeah.
right? Guys, I mean, what the heck? If let's suppose this was this let's suppose this was a it was Christians doing this thing. Well, I'd be sitting there going, expose the hell out of these guys. I would want it exposed more. I would want it exposed even more if it was people who claim to be following Christ. Like, I'd be more concerned about it if it was like my group or my church doing this stuff. I would be more enraged. But what are they saying here? They're saying, nope, you can't report all these rapes and gang rapes and stuff like that because that will upset the general Muslim population. They won't vote for you anymore. They won't vote for you if you arrest rapists because they're part of their community. What's that mean? What's that mean? It means they're fine with it. Or even if they're, it's kind of wrong, but not nearly as important as our community cohesion. That's some sick stuff. London has the largest Muslim population in Britain. Khan relies on significant electoral support from those communities, as well as having an ethno-religious motive to protect the public reputation of Pakistani Muslims in particular. Widespread acknowledgement of organized networks of predominantly Pakistani Muslim men targeting vulnerable white girls would have shattered the narrative of community cohesion that successive London administrations, none more than Khan's, have promoted. As for others in authority, fear of being labeled racist paralyzed the Metropolitan Police and City Hall in the same way it did in Rotherham and Rochdale before them. One anonymous whistleblower told us that boys as well as girls are an especially vulnerable target for criminal gangs, typically Albanian, Somali, or Turkish, operating in the capital. Yet the relevant bodies still refuse to collect data on ethnicity, willfully rendering themselves blind to the very behavioral patterns that are supposed to aid law enforcement in its pursuit of justice. The Metropolitan Police Review, the National Crime Agency operation, and the witness accounts pouring in prove that group-based child sexual exploitation has thrived in our capital city. This inquiry records the failure without reservation. Khan and the senior leadership of the Metropolitan Police must answer for their role in this scandal. Until the capital confronts the truth with the same rigor now demanded elsewhere, the children of London remain at risk and the state remains complicit. That's a good sentence. The state remains complicit. All right, AP, what did you want to say? Now you go into this long section of like 80-some pages of victim testimonies. We'll probably check out a couple of them, guys.
Well, I just wanted to ask a few questions, such as the following. I just want to, with everything that we have heard here, everything that we have seen, I just want to ask everyone who's watching what they think. What is worse, grooming gangs or racism? What is worse, bigotry or grooming gangs? What's worse, nationalism or grooming gangs? What is worse, deportations or grooming gangs?
Do you want me to do polls on this, man?
What's worse, mass deportations or grooming gangs? I just want everyone to tell me what they think. What's worse in each of this case? Are grooming gangs worse, or are the other things worse? Very, very curious to know everyone's response here. Especially, what is worse, rape gangs or mass deportations? That's the question.
All right. I put up the poll. Not in the Zoot sense, but I put it up. Put up the poll. What is worse, grooming gangs or deportations? We'll let that go. We'll let that go for a couple minutes. We'll take these super chats and then we'll
I also want
check out some
to say
victim testimonies. What's up?
I just want to repeat one more. This is just statistically speaking. I'm not making any statement here. I'm not making any ideological statement or any other suggestion. I just want to point out that statistically, so according to the numbers that we have just seen, if there were no Muslims in the UK, there would be no grooming gang problem in the UK. That's according to the statistics. That's according to the numbers. That's what we have seen. So the grooming gang problem, the rape gang problem, only exists because there are Muslims in the United Kingdom, according to the statistics. That's literally it. And
So hey, just to be clear, you would still have rapes, you would still have child abuse and stuff, but the organized, like this whole group, the grooming gangs, that whole thing is almost exclusively Islamic. It's mass.
yeah,
It is. They said around it's said around 87% if you just look at all the grooming gangs and so on. But they said in certain areas it's exclusively Muslim in certain areas and stuff like that. But overall, 87% of
yeah,
grooming
yeah.
gang cases.
And the report points out again and again, and it will point out further when you look at the report, that that
Hey, what's up with your mic, man? It sounds all weird.
does it sound weird now? Still weird?
No, it sounds better there.
Weird.
Getting a weird distortion.
So the thing is also what also needs to be pointed out. The report also points this out again and again that there seems to be a pattern, or there very clearly is a pattern that these grooming gangs operate based on their religious beliefs and on their religious culture, which influences their behavior and influences those around them and influences those who are witnesses to their behavior and to their criminal activities, and even when they have people who witness the criminal acts and who disagree with it, those people, because of in-group versus out-group behavior, still refuse to report or tell on the crimes of their fellow Muslims because they don't want to tell on their fellow Muslims. They don't want to tell the authorities or the non-Muslims about the crimes of their fellow Muslims. They don't want to do that, which is why even many of those Muslims who are aware of what their fellow Muslims are doing, meaning running grooming gangs, they refuse to tell the authorities because they want to protect their fellow Muslims. There is an ideological war going on here, and people need to be very, very much aware of that. And so this report is being run by Rupert Lowe, who is one of the leaders and front runners of the current awakening that is happening in the UK, and the people of the UK are becoming more and more and more aware. We have seen this in the last elections. They are becoming more and more defiant to this messed up suicidal spirit that the UK has had for decades now, and this is not going to end well. And I hope that more and more people wake up to this and turn things around. I have had hope for the UK and for an awakening for a year or so now, since I went to the UK again and visited it and talked to more people. I see this awakening. I see a new British spirit rising up and waking up, and I can see that things are turning around, and the people who love their country want to take their country back. And I encourage everyone who has been quiet so far to join this awakening, and for all others who are not part of the UK to help the UK wake up and turn the country around. Because the country has been raped, and it's time to stop the rapist.
That wouldn't be a very provocative claim in most places, at most times. We need to stop the rapist.
Yeah.
What? What kind of horrible person are you? You must be a far right extremist. Let's take some super chats to cleanse our minds for a moment.
Yeah, I'll be right back.
All right. Shameless plug for Christian Gadfly's channel. He posted a cool new video. Oh, and something Mike Winger. Got to bring up Mike Winger. Christian gadflies. All right, we'll check that out. I'll check that out. Remember, chat, Jay thinks we're worse than Muslims. I don't think it's that Jay thinks we're worse, but we're kind of in the same category as people outside of the true church. I feel like we know the influence. I feel like we know the influence of Islam. Yeah, you can kind of see it. Momo was the first victim of the Stanny grooming gang. That's true. Islam normalizes sabaya, female captive, sex slave, those whom your right hands possess, owner of a female captive, stated multiple times in the Quran. Yeah, guys, I'm guessing they expand upon this since they, even in the intro, they broke down, I think they said eight teachings of Islam that contribute to this, and they're the same ones I would have pointed out. But yes, female captives. And what you have, what's interesting is if you bring this, because I know, because I brought it up with Muslims, you say, hey, what about, captives in the Quran? You take women and girls as sex slaves. They say, yeah, that's in battle. You win the battle, and then you take the sex slaves. Say. So they're saying that has nothing to do with the grooming gangs. And it's like, wait a minute, what's the goal? The goal is to take non-Muslim women and girls as your sex slaves. Yeah, but you'd fight a war. Yeah, because people back then would have fought to protect their women and girls. In other words, it wasn't a thing where you say, oh yeah, take all our, yeah, do whatever you want to our girls. Yeah, just don't call us names. In other words, you don't need to conquer them with your army now. You can conquer them with words and name calling and calling them racist and calling them bigots and calling them Islamophobes. You conquer them that way, and then the same result. You take the women and girls. Heard about the boy unalived by his two fathers. I remember one like last year, but I don't know if there's another one. Turkey mentioned. Yep. Did you guys see that Muslim Georgetown professor Jonathan Brown replied to Rupert Lowe, who noted the connection to Islam, where he just said, "Get over it"? Yeah, I did see him saying that. I didn't know if it was Rupert Lowe. I probably didn't know who Rupert Lowe was back then. And by the way, that's a professor, guys. What could possibly be the connection between people from the Middle East and Africa? Curious. Yeah, they're completely different areas. What would be the connection? And not just that, Pakistan, Afghanistan. What do all these places that are completely different parts of the world, what do they have in common? God bless. Keep up the good work. Christ is Lord. Hi, David. I became a Christian 2 years ago. I just wanted to thank you for sharing your story, which encouraged me to forgive myself from the past. Thank you for defending the truth. God bless. Yes, you can't change the past, but you can change. So, got to do that. David, where's your mods at? There's some weird alt accounts in here. Oh yeah, I don't have a lot of mods. I'll check in a second though, and I will crush any weirdos. I think UK police are cowards and bad at their job. Oh yeah. Because keep in mind, it's not just that stuff. You guys remember when they like Hatun would be surrounded by a bunch of Muslims heckling her, and police would show up and arrest Hatun. It's like beyond cowardly. Or you'd have they would arrest a woman who's down the street from an abortion clinic, and she's praying quietly. She's not protesting. She's not yelling anything. She's just standing there because she's praying silently. And they would show up and arrest her. Meanwhile, Muslims, you can just take over an entire intersection or something like that, and nope, don't want to interfere with that. Crazy, crazy stuff. I feel too over from... What the heck is this? Sounds like some Nordine stuff. Why didn't fathers form counter gangs? Oh, yeah, they surrendered the right to self-defense along with their guns years ago. Well, that's the thing. Police would actually go after the dads. Crusade. How are we supposed to believe in equality with stuff like this happening? How does one live with the Christian ethic of equality but want justice now? You can believe in that all human beings are created equal, as the image of God. That doesn't mean you don't punish wrongdoers and so on. Matter of fact, that's why you're accountable. You because you're created in the image of God, and you have the ability to know things and know right and wrong, and you have this concept of justice and so on. That makes you more responsible than, let's say, an animal that does something. The U.S. should start sanctioning the UK until they hold their own government accountable for this abomination. Well, we kind of have to see what's going on. If they actually start doing something, then we'll see what happens. It's crusade time, lads. AP, to quote the great philosopher Bender Bending Rodriguez, we all feel like that all the time. Yeah, AP's not here, but that was in response to AP. His questions on how this makes you feel. Perps and enablers need to be deported from life. Well, that's very rude. Thank you for covering this. No doubt Starmer will try to sweep this under the rug. This needs to be a global scandal. I have to say, that is his MO, but this would seem to be a pretty bad time to go that route, right? Like, he either needs to keep his mouth shut or needs to change his approach. If he just tries to minimize this or attack the people who are bringing it forward, I think his days are numbered. Psalm 82:2, arise, O God, judge the earth, for you shall inherit all the nations. D Wood and AP, keep exposing this stuff, and educated, less informed. God bless you both. Nations should lower visa status for UK nationals for allowing this to happen. The UK gives away passports to rapists, terrorists, and pedophiles. Yes, it indisputably does. And I'm just thinking about this, guys. So it became kind of they said it started in the 1950s. Like, that's where you got the first recorded cases of, like, these Pakistani guys, like, gang raping girls and stuff. But became a pretty big issue in the 1970s. Guess what? They keep bringing people in from Pakistan. If you know, like, okay, granted, it's not all the Pakistanis are doing. It's not even most of the Pakistanis who are involved. But if you know, like, 1 out of 8 Pakistanis that you bring in becomes a gang rapist, why in the blue hell do you keep bringing them in? Why? D. Wood is banned from UK because he's too manly. Yeah. We got the same cowards in Sweden. A whistleblower and dentist from Gotland, Bernd Harlitz, was fired after warning the migrations occurred in 2016. Mm-hmm. Turkey mentioned again. Yeah, Turkey getting mentioned a lot in these grooming gang reports. Hey, D. Wood, can we get a page rip or two for the sheer barbarism of the gangs? As a Brit, I'm doing what I can, but it's hard to convince others. Yes. Hey, AP.
What?
We should do another stream where we read a bunch of the stories and we just shred the Quran the entire time we're reading the stories of the victims, man. Oh, but this is so offensive. Hey, Muslims, if this offends you more than the grooming gangs, now you know why we don't like the book that causes you to think like that. For Pakistani Muslims in the UK, it is in their best interest to protest and weed out these attitudes. If not, what do you think will happen in 5 years? Nothing good. Racist leads to blaming a religion. Oh, racist, blaming a religion. Ideology. Not racist, blaming Asians. Yeah, isn't that weird? We don't want to be racist, so we'll call them Asians. I think most of this audience has a right or centrist world and political view. Unsure how many leftists would watch this content, since many of them respond and behave like propagandists. Yeah, they got some problems. We don't need mass portations. We need .exe. Jay said, we're worse than Muslims on live yesterday. Whoa, he did, dude. Hey, that's your boy, AP. That's your fellow orthobro. You hear this? So someone said,
I don't want to say anything without knowing exactly what he said. I always like to check the context first of what is being said, but I would totally be unsurprised to hear that kind of garbage from Jay.
Yeah, it was said, it was an earlier super chat, and they said, Jay says we're worse than Muslims. I said, no, I mean, no, we're just in the same category as not, not being part of the true church. And someone, nope, he said it. He said it on live yesterday. It was crazy because someone messaged me yesterday and said, hey, Jay's over there crashing out in his live stream. It's like, well, it doesn't mean I'm going to go watch it. But
Hey, Winston Marshall just published my his interview with me on his channel
is this
today.
channel called Winston Marshall?
Yes,
Hang on, just to be
and
clear. Just to be clear. That's the channel name he decided to go with.
yeah,
Winston Marshall.
yes,
He chose that. He went with
yes,
that. He said, "Hey, I can
yes,
name my channel anything." He went with Winston Marshall.
yes,
Okay,
which is a
just wanted
very
to verify.
base name.
Well, he looks pretty cool.
You should put that in the description, and I encourage everyone to go and watch it. Normally, I don't do much of the just promoting my latest thing here, but it is specifically related to the
That's all you do. All you do is promote your own stuff.
it is specifically related to the topic here because it was in London, and Winston Marshall is British, and we talked specifically about immigration, the impact of Islam, and what needs to be done in Britain. So I want to really amplify that to help somehow contribute to finding the solution, which I think is very obvious, but British people often don't want to admit.
No, because they don't want to. They don't want to feel like they're being mean.
Yeah.
All right, so I got that and watch AP's latest interview here. Don't check that out now, guys, but afterwards check that out
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
watch and share it. Can
Late.
you verify, AP, do you verified, you vouched that it was actually good and not some boring stuff that we've heard 10,000 times before?
It was very good.
Was it was it based, yes or no?
It was super based. The thing is, he also asked me. He asked me a very important question. He said that we have, not all Muslims are that bad. I mean, we have lots of Muslims, for example, from oil countries, from I don't know, from Saudi Arabia, from Dubai, from Qatar, and so on, who are not very well known to engage in all these crimes and all that. And we have others that are less known for such activities. And why is that? And why is it more prominent with people from Pakistan and Afghanistan and Somalia, for example? So I started responding to that, and it is actually one of the best points I've ever made.
Wait, what?
One of the best points I've ever made when I responded to that, and he also helped me with it, and we figured that out a little bit. Where we talked about how, for example, like I lived in Turkey. I come from a Turkish culture,
Huh, yeah, we've been hearing a lot about Turkey in the past hour and a half.
and Turkey has this whole secularization process in the past, which is why they are a kind of a certain kind of Muslim. And although they might also engage in things like these, they are not the majority of people who do stuff like this. The oil countries have oil, and that determines how they act. They have this comfortable oil development and oil richness. Then you have other countries like Pakistan, Afghanistan, Somalia, and others that didn't go through a hardcore, deeply entrenched secularization, nor do they have the oil or anything else that made them rich and comfortable. They simply have their good old Islamic tradition and Islamic culture. That's the one thing they have. People who come from those cultures that don't have these other factors, that just have Islam, end up being the most messed up ones, statistically speaking, often in these countries. In the UK, you will see that Muslims from certain countries that simply are Muslim, simply Islamic, are overrepresented in crimes and in problems. It's because Islam itself is a very, very messed up factor in society. If you have Islam alone as your great value, you will end up with a very messed up society. And import massive numbers of people from countries that only have Islam as their identity, you will also end up destroying your own country, which is why you will end up destroying your country if you import masses of people from countries like Pakistan, Afghanistan, Somalia, and all these other things, all these other countries or so called countries, also known as trash holes and such. And it needs to stop and it needs to be reversed. I think millions need to be deported.
That's pretty racist, but it's exactly
Thank
what
you.
that's exactly what we would expect from a Turk. You know what? We should get a bunch of ex-Muslim Turks to do all the complaining about Islamic immigration and stuff. And then when people condemn you, you go, "What? You're just being racist against Turks? Why are you British people so racist against Turks?" That would be the kryptonite, man.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't understand why these people are even tolerated. It's beyond me. Any idea why this is persisting? Yeah, sometimes this would be a shout out to Nordine here. Nordine. Sometimes I think it's like it's beyond psychology and so on. It's just demonic. Something
It's
like
pretty
that.
racist. That's pretty racist.
What's worse, the Grape Gangs or Mike Winger? They're they're horrible, but in different ways. You should look into how thousands of Hindu and Christian girls are abducted and forcibly married to Muslim men with impunity every year in Pakistan. We see lots of those stories. The snakes keep growing and hiding in the grass. If this goes on, then lawnmower time is inevitable, whether you like the grass or not. That's also part of it. It's so for people who, oh, but I don't want a backlash against Muslim, then you should deal with the problem now. Because if you keep suppressing and silencing all criticism of like gang rape of girls, you eventually have something that just explodes. And it's going to be it'll be a lot worse for the Muslims you claim to care about than actually dealing with it and dealing with it through deportations now and putting people in prison and so on. AP, what did you think after your visit with Winston Marshall? Did he listen well? So far, he seems a little thick sometimes.
No, he's good. He's very open to having his mind changed, and he's also I think he's very good. I have we have become friends since that conversation happened,
Oh,
and
if you like him so much, just do live streams with him from now on.
and maybe I will. So no, he's very good, and he's very open to he's very open to these topics. So I loved it. I loved it. It's it's good.
Rupert Lowe is talking about bringing back the death sentence for grooming gangs. Vote restore, not reform. Not sure we can vote our way out of this, but if we can, that is the vote to make.
I don't want to. I'll just leave that. Whatever. Yeah. Have your opinions.
Is Keir's 16 ban really about the recent riots? What's 16 ban? What is that?
Um, so the current government, the current UK government, enacted a ban for under 16-year-olds
Oh, okay.
social media. That's what.
Oh, yeah, I did see that. UK has become a threat to the civilized world, allowing Zut Huddies to do whatever they want and travel. I hope patriot Brits take the UK back. I urge everyone to reverently read Psalm 94 today. Oh, you should be reading the Psalms every day. Don't punish the people for the rogue government. The people, actually, that's Rouge. The Rouge government, the people have consistently voted against this and betrayed by every party. We don't want this. Thanks, D Wood and AP. A little thing, but it meant a lot. And this is what happens when Romans 13:4 isn't institutionalized. Where is the sword that government is commanded to wield in this situation? No justice. Why people, yeah, so according to Romans 13, God gives governments to punish wrongdoers and so on. What happens when the government becomes the protector of the wrongdoers and punishes the victims. Why people keep blaming the dads after they imprisoned and treated Tommy or anyone else who stood up as terrorists. Feminists, Bueller. It was June 14th during your live stream. My bad. Oh, so 2 days ago. Huh. Wait, wasn't he crashing out yesterday? Someone messaged me and said he was crashing out yesterday. You're saying it was the day before? So it's a different crash out? Let's see. They say Christians are worse than others because Christians are perceived as pushovers. We're not. We pushed Islam, Battle of Tours, out. Time for push number 2. Yeah, guys. I mean, that's how lots of people are now after being conditioned in certain ways for many decades. But guys, for 14 centuries, Islam tried to take Europe. And for 14 centuries, Christians didn't let them.
Hey, does anybody where did Jay exactly say that? That David or
Yeah, I'd have to see that, and I'd have to see like he's not just goofing off and joking or something like that.
I checked his latest live stream.
They said it was the 14th, man. That's 2 days ago. Wait, what is this?
Okay, so what he does is he makes a live stream and then he closes it for members only or something like that. So then I can check it because I'm not going to go and become a member for his channel. So I can't really check what exactly he said. But what was very funny is I checked his last live stream from yesterday, and somebody made a super chat and said that they encountered Muslims and blew their minds with the Islamic dilemma, and Jay actually said that that's quite cool and all that. So he appreciates the arguments that come from people like David, but apparently people like David are worse than Muslims. So interesting.
Wait, so he said it was the 14th, but the most recent live stream is yesterday, and the most recent live stream before that is 5 days ago. So how is that a thing?
14th, but there's a live stream on the 14th, but it's members only.
Oh, so I have to become a member to see his dumb live stream? Come on.
Of course, you can become a channel member.
You get like a free month or something like that? What?
I don't know.
When a pig and a bird make a baby, you get D Wood. A pig and a bird. That's kind of funny. You see that one? When a pig and a bird make a baby, you get D Wood. And what's the Jerry Seinfeld voice. And what's the deal with Turks? Why are they always late? Who are these people? AP was checking his guns earlier and solved all of England's problems by scaring away all the bad people. Lol. That's smart.
Yeah.
AP, with all the silliness and orthodoxy, have you considered orthopedia, orthography, orthogonality, or ornithology?
Yes.
You heard it here, folks. Not sure if D Wood does Halloween, but if he does the shirtless Quran jacket look from yesterday with a large gold chain, would be a fire look as rapper Dazut riding roughshod over Dawa. Oh yeah, you missed it yesterday, AP. I said I was on IP's channel and he said for $300 David will strip or something like that. I said yeah, I'll take it all off, but then someone tossed in $300 and so. I said, well, I didn't say I'd do it I didn't say I'd do it on camera, so I went like beside the camera and then put all my clothes on the chair. But then I had to put something on, and I had that Quran Islamic Dilemma onesie there, so I tossed that on.
Nice.
So that's what you missed, man. And last one here. Kier is implementing ID and face recognition to keep minors off social media. Is it about protecting kids or tracking anti-Islamic sentiment? Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, there are good reasons for keeping kids off social media, given what it does to their brains and stuff like that. Problem is, I don't trust anything that government or that administration would do. Everything has to be for... Like, you don't think, oh, they're actually trying to help kids. They're trying to control people or trying to control the population or something like that. But it's creepy stuff. All right. AP. We've been through all the introductory material. Let's just read one or two of these victim testimonies, and we'll decide what we want to do sometime later. Ready?
Yes.
All right, let's check it out, guys. Victim testimony. There are thousands of survivors who could have provided evidence to our inquiry team. Below is a summary of some of the testimony provided by our brave witnesses who spoke at the inquiry hearings. Some of the witnesses have to remain anonymous for their own safety. We've got Chloe. Throughout her early childhood, Chloe was popular at school, performed well academically, and enjoyed an active social life. Although her parents separated when she was very young, she describes her early upbringing as relatively stable. Following the separation, full custody of Chloe and her older brother was awarded to their father despite his alcoholism. Her mother, on the other hand, was often absent from her life and became homeless following the separation. Why is this important? Why is this important? The grooming gangs look for vulnerable girls from some kind of dysfunctional background. So they often look for girls like this from troubled families and so on. Chloe, what?
There's an important point, by the way. So that is a very, very important point. People often think, people often don't understand the complexities and intricacies of this psychologically messed up ring of or activity of crimes like grooming girls. It's not as easy as just seeking out your victim and then snatching them and raping them or anything. It's much worse than that. You have to seek out weak ones and then make use of them and then program them slowly. They specifically seek out weak ones, people with or girls with bad families, with family problems, with depression, with other concerns that are not very strong-minded, not very strong-willed, and all that. We know about another kind of criminal that also does that specific thing. Human traffickers like Andrew Tate. Andrew Tate
I
specifically
was
is
thinking
also known
as soon as you started thinking that, I was thinking Andrew Tate described the exact same methodology. It was part of his PhD program.
Yeah,
He would train his I guess students to find vulnerable girls who didn't have a strong relationship with their father and things like that, because they were the ones you could control better.
yeah. So Andrew Tate has done the very, very same thing. He has in fact taught this to people. He has sold courses in which he taught people to do exactly that, which is go out meeting young girls or women, go on a date with them, and then determine whether they are good material or not. If they are independent women, independent girls, if they are strong-willed, if they have stable families and all that. If they are not very prone to be emotionally manipulated, they're probably not good material. So you probably want to move on to the next target. Then you want to find one. You want to find one that has a very troubled past, that has troubled family, has a troubled family, has family issues, has abandonment issues, has abuse in the past, is quite naive, and so on and so forth. So you want to look for a weak target, and then slowly start programming and exploiting that target, tricking her with little gifts, with false sense of security and care and gifts and all that. So it's the very, very same method. Andrew Tate. This is why lots of people who are familiar with what Andrew Tate did don't understand why he's accused of running a human trafficking business, because people get their information of what rape and what human trafficking is from movies, where it's usually for dramatic purposes depicted like people just abduct unsuspecting girls or children and then chain them up, lock them up, and then sell them and all that. That's not how it works in the real world. In the real world, the majority of grooming and human trafficking is done by psychologically manipulating, slowly programming, lying to, and then exploiting, and through a sense of safety, tricking these victims. Many of the victims of grooming and of human trafficking, years into their victimhood, still are not aware that they're being trafficked or that they're being groomed. Many of them still think, oh no, he's a good guy. He's taking care of me, because they have been so far manipulated and duped by these professionals, by these criminal, professional, messed up psychopaths. No offense, David. Um, but that is how it generally works. And people also need to realize that if you have a problem with the grooming gangs, you should also have a problem with Andrew Tate. You shouldn't be a hypocrite. You can't be a hypocrite. It's the very same methodology. It's the very same approach. These are absolutely abhorrent, horrible people, horrible devils, evil people who take advantage of the disadvantaged, of those who are not strong or happy or lucky or well supported in life, and then who abuse them over time. That is how it's done with grooming gangs and how it's done with human trafficking. And it all needs to be called out. It all needs to be taken down. It all needs to be brutally punished.
Chloe recalls a generally secure and supportive home environment under the care of her father. However, following his sudden death just before her 10th birthday, she moved in with her mother and her mother's new husband, a man she describes as a pedophile by whom she was sexually abused. Chloe's mother caught her husband assaulting Chloe on many occasions, but did little to stop it. On one occasion, Chloe's mother caught her husband in the shower with Chloe, and instead of intervening, she closed the door and walked out. At this time, Chloe was 10 years old. The abuse soon escalated to rape. Chloe's stepfather supplied her with alcohol and cigarettes to keep her quiet, and she began smoking cannabis. Around the same time, Chloe started truanting and spending time in the local town center with a friend unsupervised. She describes groups of Muslim men, primarily Pakistanis, aged 20 to over 50, showing them attention, including wolf whistling and buying them alcohol. Many were taxi drivers who would take the girls into their cars and drive them around the town. At this stage, there was no sexual abuse, and although the men's behavior was clearly inappropriate, Chloe and her friend, then in the final year of primary school, enjoyed being treated like adults. We've heard that over and over again. The grooming soon intensified. The provision of alcohol and takeaways was accompanied by emotional manipulation with the men, many of whom were related to one another, presenting themselves as sympathetic friends to Chloe. Chloe describes this process as them mapping out, are you a vulnerable person? Physical contact, including kisses and massages, became increasingly common. Meanwhile, the abuse by her stepfather at home worsened, and her mother was all but absent as a guardian. At this time, Chloe had an aunt and uncle who lived nearby, and she often sought refuge with them. She had spent holidays with them during her earlier childhood and felt that she could trust them. On one occasion, she had visited them while truanting before returning home and spending the day there while her mother and stepfather were at work. To Chloe's surprise, her uncle arrived at her house unannounced an hour later, and she invited him inside. After a brief conversation, Chloe's uncle sexually assaulted her. Chloe resisted, and he relented and left. She told her mother about the assault, and her mother reported it to the police. The police accused Chloe of lying, and no further action was taken. Until this incident, she had regarded her uncle as one of the best people in her life. Afterwards, there were no adults left that Chloe could confide in or seek support from. Catch that? No adults in her life that she could confide in or seek support from. And that's a perfect target for certain people. Increasingly isolated, she became more deeply involved with the groups of Muslim men she encountered in the town center. One evening, Chloe's friend suggested they travel to a nearby town where one of the men had a hotel room. They were picked up by the man, who was drunk and under the influence of drugs, and taken to the hotel. When they arrived, hotel staff saw them but did not intervene. In the room, the girls were given a potent strain of cannabis, which left Chloe, then 11, absolutely smashed. Chloe's friend was taken into another room by a group of men, and Chloe was groped by the man who remained. So her friend was taken by a group of men. There was one guy who remained with her. Chloe resisted, and he hit her. The man did not attempt to sexually assault her again, and instead threw the girls, both of whom were still intoxicated, out of the hotel and refused to drive them back to their hometown. They were forced to walk. It was around midnight. Chloe did not want to go back to her home as she feared her mother would beat her for being out so late. so stayed with a friend. In the early hours of the morning, Chloe was collected from her friend's house by the police after her mother reported her missing. Chloe lied to the police and her mother about where she had been. Chloe's mother grounded her for a month, meaning she was stuck at home with her predatory stepfather, a period she describes as torture. After the month passed, Chloe arranged to see her friend, who boasted that she had a new boyfriend. Chloe left the house to meet her, and the girls were picked up by the boyfriend, who was, in fact, a 25-year-old Indian man. Initially, Chloe thought the man was nice, posher than the other men she had met in the town center. He took Chloe and her friend to a shop where he purchased a bottle of vodka before picking up one of his friends and taking the girls to a secluded location. During their journey, the men began pressuring the girls for sex. Chloe refused, stating that she was on her period, but the men replied that it did not matter. Night was falling when they arrived, and the boyfriend took Chloe's friend out of the car, leaving Chloe alone with the other man. He proceeded to rape her on the back seats. This incident took place in 2003. In 2022, Chloe took the two men to court, but neither were found guilty. From this moment, Chloe's life spiraled. At 12 years old, she began drinking heavily, smoking large amounts of cannabis, and taking harder drugs, including ecstasy, anything to block it out of her mind. She would drink before school just to get through the day, and her attendance dropped significantly. She and her friend would spend school hours in the town center, walking around until somebody picked them up in a car, somebody bought them alcohol, or somebody gave them drugs.
12 years old.
There were times when Chloe would be missing for up to 3 days, during which time she was passed between taxis, drugged, abused, and raped. In every case, the perpetrators were Muslims and primarily Pakistani. So guys, notice, girls get damaged in other ways, and these are the kinds of girls these guys are looking for. On one occasion, Chloe was abducted by an abuser who was driving drunk and taken to a graveyard. He gave Chloe, still 12 years old, whiskey before forcing himself on her and raping her. He withdrew before ejaculation and forced the empty whiskey bottle into Chloe's vagina, where it shattered. Chloe admitted herself to A&E, but no questions were asked about how she had sustained such an injury. She was examined, the glass removed, and she was discharged. 12-year-old girl with a smashed whiskey bottle inside her. No further questions. Chloe was questioned by police due to her absence on a number of occasions. Each time she was asked where she had been, who she had been with, and what she had been doing. She replied that she had been having sex with adult males in cars. Rather than opening an investigation and pursuing her abusers, the police dismissed Chloe as a prostitute. 12-year-old prostitute. They asked her whether she was consenting to the sexual activity, and despite Chloe telling them that she did not know the definition of the word consent, they reported that she had been. The police found Chloe, as well as other missing children, in cars with the gang members on multiple occasions, but let the gang members go without so much as questioning them. On one occasion, Chloe was in the town center and was identified as a missing child by a police officer who questioned where she had been. Chloe told this police officer about the full extent of the abuse, and the response of the police officer was that nothing could be done, and Chloe was let go. In response to her truancy and deteriorating behavior, the school regularly placed Chloe in isolation and compelled her to attend additional after-school classes every day. This did little to improve her emotional state, and she continued to spend time with her friend and her friend's boyfriend. This went on for a number of years. The boyfriend would supply the girls with alcohol and drugs, as well as introducing them to friends who were exclusively South Asian men. On one occasion, he took the girls to his place of work, a textiles factory, where he raped Chloe. Following this incident, Chloe stopped spending time with the friend who, up until this point, had accompanied her throughout her exploitation. By this time, Chloe had become so accustomed to her lifestyle of spending time with the Muslim gangs that she continued to do so without her friend. It became normal. On one occasion, following another late return home, her mother grounded her for 2 months. Fearing further abuse from her stepfather, Chloe walked to a nearby social services office while her mother was at work and reported him. Chloe was interviewed by the social workers about the abuse, after which her mother and stepfather were arrested and questioned. Both denied that the abuse was taking place and were released without charge. Chloe made further appeals to social services and was eventually removed from the house and placed in foster care. She lived with a couple who cared for several other foster children, and, though she found them snobby and judgmental, found some semblance of stability with them. But it did not last long. She was still living in the same town, so when she went into the town center, as she often did both alone and with the foster carers, the Muslim gangs would recognize and target her. She remained at the same school, and because she now lived further away, the foster carers paid for taxis to take her there. She would ask the taxi drivers to drop her near the school and, rather than attending, would walk to one of the neighborhoods where the Muslim gangs spent their time. The gangs would take her into their taxis, ply her with drugs and alcohol, and sexually abuse her. Around the age of 13, Chloe disclosed to social services that she was being sexually abused by gangs of Muslim men. In response, social services did not intervene, but rather talked to Chloe about contraception and sexual health. One social worker started regularly taking Chloe to a sexual health clinic where she was diagnosed with chlamydia in her throat and vagina, gonorrhea, genital warts, and pelvic inflammatory disease. Neither the social workers nor the clinic staff questioned or reported this. She was 13. The police were aware of Chloe's activities, but instead of targeting those responsible for her abuse, they routinely failed to question them, let alone pursue further action when Chloe was found in cars and houses with them. Chloe was soon moved to a different foster placement with a far more protective carer. On one occasion, a gang came to the foster home searching for Chloe, and the carer fought them off in the street to protect her. Imagine that. Around the time Chloe turned 14, a social worker approached her about her ongoing sexual exploitation. This was one of the first times this happened, and Chloe was relieved that her abuse was finally being addressed. However, rather than offering a solution, the social worker instead told Chloe that the producers of Emmerdale were looking for a young actress to play a victim of child sexual exploitation, and asked whether she would be interested in auditioning for the role, given her experience. So, hey, you're a victim. You want to play one in a movie? Following this exchange, Chloe, upset, angry, and in a state of disbelief, ran away from the foster home and, after being abducted by a Muslim gang, was missing for 6 months. Over this period, she was trafficked across the length and breadth of Britain. She was taken to house after house and raped and abused by guy after guy after guy after guy. The men who abused her paid money to the gang, which treated her as little more than a commodity. She was reported missing, and her photograph was shown on TV. Her abusers remarked on this. "You're that girl off the TV that's missing." But her whereabouts were never reported to the police. Chloe describes a cycle of grooming, rape, and drug and alcohol abuse. This went on until eventually she was located by police. When the police found her, she was in a car with a South Asian Muslim man. The man was let go without charge, and she was returned to her mother's house. Chloe's relationship with her mother had completely broken down by this point, so she continued to run away, and her psychological state deteriorated further. Following another period of grooming and sexual exploitation by a Muslim gang, Chloe was taken into police custody and transported to a secure unit at a children's home. She describes the home as being like a prison. Every aspect of her life was controlled and surveilled, and she was routinely subjected to bodily examinations, include full cavity searches. Chloe found the experience highly traumatic. She remained there for 9 months, by which time she was almost 15. Social services determined that she was well enough to be released, and she was placed in foster care not far from where she had been living before. Chloe describes the new carers as a positive and encouraging presence in her life, and in spite of her proximity to the sites of her abuse and exploitation, Chloe found stability and security living with them. She enrolled in a full-time hairdressing and beauty course at a nearby college, and for the next 2 years, Chloe describes her life as fantastic. As Chloe approached her 18th birthday, social services notified her that the foster care would soon end. They identified a house for her, and after parting ways with her carer, she moved in and got a retail job to support herself. Despite having little experience taking care of herself, Chloe's life remained generally stable through this period. Eventually, Chloe reestablished contact with a friend whom she had been abused with as a young child. She invited her over to her house, and when she arrived, she was accompanied by a group of Muslim men, all of whom remembered Chloe from past abuse. Immediately, Chloe's life was thrown back into chaos. The men refused to leave, and in Chloe's words, "It was no longer my quiet little house. It was their house. They smashed windows, kicked in doors, left the house an absolute wreck, and sexually abused Chloe. One of the men, a previous abuser, pinned her down, pulled her trousers down, and sat on her face, orally raping her on her own sofa as the rest of the gang watched. Chloe returned to drugs and alcohol to cope. Though she was still working in retail, her ability to work was rapidly declining. During one shift, one of her colleagues, someone she was friends with, jokingly pinched her bottom. Chloe, traumatized by years of abuse, punched him in the face in the middle of the shop. She was brought before management and tried to argue her case, but was fired. Left with no income, Chloe spiraled further. The Muslim gang was still occupying her house, and with nowhere else to go and no ability to remove them, she remained there with them. They routinely drugged, abused, and raped her, including with objects including soft drink cans, keys, and a baseball bat. Before long, they started to pay her bills to consolidate their presence in her home. On a number of occasions, they brought young children into Chloe's house to abuse them. Chloe recalls a number of occasions when boys under the age of 18 from the Muslim community were pressured and bullied by their older friends and relatives into raping her. They would have to pressure the young kids to get involved. Chloe was forced to commit crimes, including insurance fraud and the holding of drugs. On one occasion, she contacted the police to report an assault that was taking place in her house, and when they arrived, Chloe was threatened with arrest rather than the gang members, as the property was registered in her name. One evening, an associate of the gang from a neighboring town arrived at the house. A notorious sex trafficker, he soon began taking Chloe to bars and nightclubs in the surrounding area. There, he would spike her with heroin before handing her over to men who sexually assaulted and raped her. Chloe became addicted to opiates and her health deteriorated rapidly. She became anorexic, weighing just 5 stone at the age of 18. The use of heroin was a method of control by the gang, as it left her with no ability to defend herself physically. Her daily existence became a relentless cycle of rape, exploitation, and violence. Eventually, a social worker visited Chloe and was shocked by both her appearance and the conditions in which she was living. Concerned for her welfare, she took Chloe to an addiction clinic where tests revealed an extremely high concentration of opiates in her system. Chloe was prescribed medication to manage her opioid dependency and gradually weaned herself off the drugs. Around this time, Chloe reconnected with a childhood friend, and their friendship soon developed into a romantic relationship. Her boyfriend became aware of the ongoing abuse and, with the help of his father, paid off Chloe's remaining rent and moved her out of her squalid house. Chloe moved in with him, after which she got another job in retail. For a short period, Chloe's life was relatively stable. But due to her unresolved trauma, she soon returned to drinking heavily, smoking cannabis, and gambling. Her workplace was close to her first foster home, and before long, she came back into contact with members of the gang that had abused her at that time. The cycle of grooming, exploitation, and abuse soon resumed. Her relationship with her boyfriend broke down, and out of desperation, she reestablished contact with her mother, who had left her predatory husband, and soon moved back in with her. One night, Chloe was out with members of the gang and drinking heavily. Upon her return to her mother's house, her mother reported her to the police. The police arrested Chloe while she was changing into her pajamas, and she was taken to the police station drunk and half naked. She was kept in a cell until 2 a.m. the following morning, at which point she was released. They did not provide her with any clothes or transportation back to her mother's house. She tried to contact her ex-boyfriend, but he did not respond. Chloe, then 19, was left stranded. She wandered around the neighborhood for several hours before encountering a gang member who had previously abused her. Cold and desperate, she got into his car and, for the following weeks, was trafficked across the country. Eventually, Chloe identified a new house to move into. Despite their dysfunctional relationship, her mother agreed to sign the rental agreement as Chloe's guarantor, as Chloe, then without income, knew she would not be able to afford the rent. After she moved in, she became aware of the fact that she was the only white British person in her neighborhood. Every other resident was South Asian. As a result, the gangs discovered where she was living and once again treated her house as if it was their own. The cycle of abuse continued, and Chloe's emotional state deteriorated significantly. Chloe was taken to hospital after a suicide attempt, and while there, she discovered that she was pregnant. The father of the child, a Pakistani Muslim illegal migrant, moved into Chloe's home. Chloe was subsequently coerced into converting to Islam and forced into marriage, both to legitimize the pregnancy in the eyes of her abuser and to assist him in securing a visa. So, wanted to marry her to secure a visa. Chloe's behavior became tightly controlled. She was forced to wear a hijab. She was prohibited from looking out the window of her home, and if she misbehaved in the eyes of her husband, he would beat her black and blue, something that happened every day. Chloe's child was born with multiple health problems, including a defective kidney due to the deteriorated condition of Chloe's womb as a result of the sexual abuse. Nevertheless, becoming a mother gave Chloe a renewed determination to get her life back on track. She reported the father of her child to the police after he assaulted the child, and he was removed from the property. She stopped taking drugs. She was focused, and for the first time, the gangs left her alone, because now she's a Muslim. One evening, she went out with a friend who lived across the road. Chloe, now a mother, did not drink heavily, but her friend became heavily intoxicated. A group of Asian men started speaking to them and offered to take Chloe and her friend home. Chloe was suspicious of them, but for the sake of her friend, agreed. Instead of taking them home, however, they were taken to a hotel. Chloe, who was not drunk, protested and encouraged her friend, who was paralytic, to leave with her. Chloe warned her friend about what she suspected was going to happen, but her friend refused to leave. Chloe, thinking of her daughter and seeking to protect herself, reluctantly left without her. The following day, Chloe's friend told Chloe that she had been raped by the men. Shocker. The incident represented a turning point in Chloe's life. She decided that she needed to leave her hometown for good and get as far away from these Asian men as possible. By chance, she reconnected on Facebook with a man she had known in her early childhood, an old colleague of her mother, who she describes as one of the only adult men in my life who never harmed me or treated me badly. She told him about everything she had been through and her desire to leave. He lived in Scotland, and she was invited to visit him for the weekend, which she did. After returning home, she sought support from Women's Aid, who managed to secure her a property in Scotland. With nothing but her daughter and a small bag, she left her hometown, leaving a lifetime of abuse and exploitation behind, and moved to Scotland, where she resides to this day. Chloe personally knows at least 20 other girls from her area who were predated on by Muslim gangs who abused her. The pattern was always the same: grooming, drugging, trafficking, abuse, and rape. Furthermore, Chloe describes being taken into mosques. Chloe describes being taken into mosques where imams would describe non-Muslims as infidels and preach that white women who dressed inappropriately were free game. Chloe believes that the local police, social services, NHS, and government were all fully aware of what was happening, including the racialized nature of the crimes, but that they did not intervene for two reasons: because they could not be bothered with the paperwork and because they did not want to be seen as racist. Chloe blames these bodies and their major push for diversity for her abuse. Chloe says that if I can save just even one more child, girl or boy, from going through any of this, then I've done my job.
Read the next page.
Really? I was going to stop there,
yeah.
man.
No, read the next page.
Oh. Inquiry panelist. Oh, so someone asked her a question?
Yeah.
Do you know how many men abused you over that period if you had to guess? Chloe: hundreds, hundreds, and hundreds, and hundreds. Yep, these go on for a long time, guys. The takeaway here is don't be racist, guys. Racism bad. And by racism, we mean having a problem with an ideology, Islam, and how it affects people.
You know, earlier we were talking about looking for vulnerable victims, and somebody brought it up in the chat how women can be very retarded, girls can be very retarded, very naive, and all that. How old was Chloe when she was first subjected to abuse? She was a little child within her own family. How old was she when she first got into all of the trouble? She never had a way out. She was 11 years old. 11 years old. She was 12 years old when she was being lured and when she got used to spending time with these children of vermin who were already part of the grooming gangs, who were part of the rapist cultures that have invaded human civilization. She was she never had a chance. She never ever had a chance. It's very very easy to when you are looking at it from the outside to judge and to analyze and to think, oh, why didn't you just call the police? Why didn't you just do this? Why didn't you just do that? What the hell does the police do? Nothing. The police doesn't help. School doesn't help. Bystanders don't help. Employers don't help. Hospitals, the medical system doesn't help. Nothing helps. Even if she has a way out at some point and thinks, okay, I need to call the police, I need to call them over, they need to help me, they need to stop this. It's very, very obvious. They will come and believe me and put an end to this. She still questions everything and fears because she already has terrible, terrible experience with the police. At the same time, they're probably threatening her. And she knows that even if the police does something for the moment and removes them, they will come back and they will inflict pain and abuse and suffering on her. Sometimes she probably just went with it and didn't do anything because she didn't have anything else. She was just desperate. She didn't have any way out. She didn't have any hope. She didn't have any faith in this wicked, sick, messed up, evil system. This girl never had a chance. 11 years she was abused at home. She was used to abuse at home. She was 11 when she was subjected to all of this. She was 12 when she got used to it. She never had any chance at all. The people around her failed. Those who are charged with protecting her, those who are tasked by the government and by the people to protect their own citizens and the children, didn't do their job. And I really hope that one day they are all punished for what they have done. To every single person that they have failed, I hope they are all punished. Every police officer. I can't really blame it's one thing to blame the rapists and the groomers, but the thing is, they just don't know any better. They are subhuman animals. They don't know any better. But the police are supposed to do something, and they don't do anything. I hope they suffer. This is just one instance, only one case. This is only one case. What did we just read? There are possibly over 250,000 victims. 250,000. This was already unbearable to go through. There are over 250,000 possibly of these. I hope that every single person who has inflicted any suffering goes through, I don't know, man. Goes through brutal punishment. Through justice.
Yeah, that's what sucks is it'll never be as bad as what the girls went through, right? Like, I mean,
Never.
you catch a dude. Let's suppose you just beat the crap out of him over and over again, or something like that. It's nothing compared to what the girls went through, being passed around to hundreds of different guys and raped and tortured and all this stuff.
No, I don't believe in eye for an eye, but in this case, I actually do. I believe in everything that you did to that girl to be done to you 1,000 times.
Was gonna Was going to end it around here. I want to read a little more just because that was a really long one, but the next couple are just short. They're short. So that was like over 10 pages. There are a couple that are just a page or two. Let's take a look at like a little more here. Let's see. Fiona, because I don't know if we're going to get back to this or if this is the only time we'll cover this. Fiona grew up in a highly abusive household. Sound familiar? Marked by domestic violence, severe emotional abuse, and repeated suicide attempts by her mother, which Fiona witnessed. Despite exceptional academic ability, she developed serious mental health difficulties, self-harm behaviors, and suicidal ideation from a young age. After escalating abuse and failed disclosures, Fiona entered care at the age of 13. She was placed in a children's home that had already been identified as high risk for sexual exploitation in a televised documentary prior to arrival. So this place had already been reported on in a documentary for sexual abuse. Inadequate supervision meant she went missing repeatedly. At 13, she was groomed by adult Pakistani men whom she estimates were aged between 24 and 45. The grooming began with affection and alcohol, quickly progressing to rape, drug dependency, threats, and trafficking. Care staff negligence was extreme. Abusers would sit in cars outside waiting for the girls, openly converse with staff, and even phone the home to inquire about them. One care worker told Fiona's mother that her boss had described recording the men's car registration plates as above her pay grade, don't want to be bothered, warning that she would lose her job if she did so. Fiona believes the staff were aware of what was happening but felt powerless to stop it rather than being actively complicit. Nevertheless, the children's home received £5,000 per week to care for her and failed miserably. Getting paid £5,000 per week, and they suck. Fiona suspects the management avoided proper investigation for fear of being labeled racist. Only the police took any formal action, issuing harboring notices to the men, official warnings stating they had no permission to associate with, contact, or house a vulnerable child. However, no further action followed. When Fiona's mother called the police to report her daughter missing and mentioned a history of abuse by Asian men, the call handler told her, "You can't describe them as Asian men because that's racist. You should just be glad your child is being taught a different culture." Be glad your daughter is being taught by these Pakistani men who are raping her.
God, the level of things that I'm holding back here in this live stream, I swear.
On one occasion, a police officer returned Fiona to the house where the abuse was occurring and told the men to have fun with her. Police officer brought them back and said, "All right, have fun with her." On another occasion, police instructed the abusers that if they could persuade Fiona to sign herself out of care, the police would stop bothering them. The gang then tried to convince her to do so, intending to traffic her to Kashmir. She was only prevented from leaving the country because she did not have a passport. Between 2008 and 2012, Fiona was repeatedly raped by multiple men connected to organized grooming networks. She was often kept in a house known as a party house, where between 10 and 20 men would attend at one time. On one occasion, she was encouraged to bring her friends because the owner had relatives visiting from Birmingham to celebrate Eid and expected girls to be there. So you got to have a Muslim holiday. We need more girls to rape. Within the house, the girls were routinely referred to as white slags, while the men wanted Pakistani girls kept pure for marriage. The gangs reportedly discussed fears that the English Defense League, Tommy Robinson, would arrive armed, so they kept baseball bats for protection. They also allegedly spoke of attending EDL demonstrations with weapons. Fiona was not only trafficked and raped across multiple cities in the UK, but was also forced to traffic drugs. Drugs, intimidation, and violence were used to control her. She was made to clean up the knives from the scene of 2 fatal stabbings. She had to clean up the knives from 2 fatal stabbings. She was present during a shootout. Her abusers bragged to her that they had hidden dead bodies in a certain location. A few days later, Fiona recalls the news reporting on a body being recovered from the same location that the abusers had disclosed to her. As a result, threats of violence carried enormous weight. In other words, these guys are killing people. You know it. They're stabbing people. And they say, hey, you do what we want or you're in trouble. At 14, Fiona was abused by a man known as Rambo. He had entered Britain illegally in the back of a lorry. Previously castrated in Pakistan as punishment for child abuse, he had then fled to the Philippines, where he allegedly attacked multiple women and children with a large knife, the origin of his nickname. Rambo was locked in a room with 2 girls and subjected them to extreme sexual torture. The case illustrated that, in some instances, the sexual abuse of children was driven more by humiliation and control than by sexual gratification. I mean, keep in mind, this guy was punished with castration in Pakistan, attacked multiple women and children with a knife in the Philippines, and then the UK is like, yeah, come here. At 15, Fiona became pregnant while in a mixed-sex care home. Her son was later removed and adopted due to the ongoing exploitation risks, yet Fiona herself was left in the same dangerous environment. The abuse continued into her adulthood. It only stopped when she turned 18, leaving her with profound physical and psychological trauma, including PTSD, substance dependency, and long-term health damage. Fiona states that the greatest harm came not only from the abusers, but from institutional disbelief, neglect, and punishment that actively enabled the ongoing exploitation. In total, she estimates she was abused by between 50 and 100 men. Of those, only 2 were not Pakistani. Fiona, I was beaten regularly, I was drugged, filmed being raped, and the footage was distributed. I sustained broken bones, facial injuries, and severe trauma. I was subjected to racial abuse in the community and blamed by families of perpetrators. So the families would just blame her. This one's short.
I think all of this should be put on screens and blasted everywhere in Britain.
Yeah, absolutely. And guys, notice you have this report right now. You have those quotations on various pages. Very, very easy to screenshot those and share them all over the place. Michelle was physically abused in childhood by both her mother and stepfather. You guys noticing a pattern here? Her mother had multiple partners throughout Michelle's childhood, many of whom also abused her, some sexually. She believes this early experience created an association between abuse and love, leaving her particularly vulnerable. From the age of 13, she was groomed by 3 adult Pakistani brothers, it's a family affair, who supplied her with alcohol, cigarettes, and drugs. Again, notice the pattern. She was raped while intoxicated, including one occasion when she was taken upstairs while her sister tried to intervene. Because of her upbringing, she thought this was normal, that they were her boyfriends and that they loved her. She would go missing for extended periods and was subjected to repeated daily sexual abuse. The perpetrators would collect her from school, her home, and public places, using threats of violence to coerce and control her. At age 14, she was gang raped and beaten by 3 men who had locked her in a house. She was left covered in cuts and bruises, which alerted a friend. The friend told her own mother, who then contacted Michelle's mother. The police were called, but they claimed there was little they could do without more evidence. One of the gang members later forced Michelle to go to the police station with him to retract her statement. Her rapist takes her to the police station and says, hey, retract your statement. The police accepted him as her appropriate adult, a role normally reserved for a parent, close family member, social worker, or trained professional. The investigation was subsequently dropped. One of Michelle's friends, who lived in a care home, would be collected directly outside by the same gang. Care staff would call the police, but officers reportedly referred to the girls as prostitutes despite them being children. Both social services and the police, Michelle says, failed to understand the situation and believed the girls were engaging in the activity by choice. As a result, little was done to intervene. When she was abducted and went missing, no one came looking for her. A social worker once told her that at age 14, she would be allowed to live with her 30-year-old boyfriend as long as they did not share a room. Michelle was raped in bin sheds, threatened with a knife, and forced into sex with multiple men waiting in cars. She was drugged, beaten, burned with cigarettes, locked in rooms, and passed between men. An amusement arcade was used as a front for drug dealing and the sexual exploitation of children. She became pregnant 4 times as a child as a result of rape, leading to miscarriages, 1 abortion, and 1 surviving child. Of her abusers, she states 98% of them were Pakistani Muslim. If not, they were Iraqi Muslim or Kurdish. Michelle believes these gangs have remained untouchable because authorities feared being labeled racist. She describes an extensive network of abusers operating across the entire country, calling it industrial in scale. It functions as a large central network with smaller connected groups in specific localities. Michelle claims she was raped by between 600 different men over the course of 3 years. She now lives with severe PTSD and lifelong trauma, describing both her childhood and her future as destroyed. Inquiry panelists, what would you say the main issue was? Michelle, I don't think that they cared much about us. They didn't want to open that can of worms because it's a religion thing. I'd probably say 98% of them were Pakistani Muslim. If not, they were Iraqi or Kurdish. All right, we'll check one more short one. Whitney grew up in a vulnerable household. Her mother suffered from severe mental health issues, and her father was absent from her life. Again, guys, notice the pattern? She was first groomed and sexually abused at the age of 15 by two adult Pakistani brothers. One of the brothers, Whitney recalls, acted as a boyfriend figure. Both brothers would regularly take her to a flat in Birmingham, supply her with alcohol, and in her words, she would have sex with them. Their interactions with Whitney soon turned violent. They began beating her and, on one occasion, held a hot iron to her face. Whitney recalls that the brothers stopped contacting her after they arrived at her house to collect her and found all of her uncles sitting on the wall outside. Get it? See what happens there? Some uncles are around, and these guys don't want to mess around anymore. After that incident, they never came back. She cannot remember exactly how or why her uncles were there, but she believes her mother had asked them to intervene. Many years later, Whitney's daughter began self-harming at age 11 and even attempted suicide. Her phone contained sexually explicit messages. Whitney's daughter told her there was a sex room at school run by the older boys. Deeply concerned for her daughter, Whitney contacted social services. They offered little support beyond talking through the problems. In one instance, social services accidentally sent her 6 other children's case files instead of her daughter's, which left her deeply distrustful of their ability to help. Whitney's daughter was coerced into sending a sexual image, which was then circulated across multiple schools, the local community, and eventually the internet. This led to her receiving unwanted attention from adult men of various ethnicities and from multiple countries. From that point on, Whitney's daughter began going missing regularly. These disappearances were directly linked to sexual demands and exploitation by older boys and adult men. She was threatened with violence if she contacted the police and sometimes returned home with items of clothing missing. Whitney repeatedly reported her concerns to the police and social services, clearly stating that she believed her daughter was being sexually exploited. Police responses were often delayed, statements were not taken, and investigations were closed without further action. Social services refused to relocate the family, downgraded the risk level, and eventually closed the case despite ongoing exploitation. Whitney herself was blamed, and her own past was used to undermine her credibility as a parent. Her family received repeated threats, including warnings that their house would be burned down, faces would be slashed, and machetes would be used. Later, Whitney discovered that her daughter had been placed on the National Referral Mechanism as a trafficking victim without her being informed. The NRM is the UK's official framework for identifying, referring, and supporting victims of human trafficking and modern slavery, and serves as a recognition by a designated professional that an individual is a potential victim of human trafficking or modern slavery. So this happened to her, and then it happened to her daughter, and there was nothing she could do about it. And then she was on then her daughter was on a government list. No one had even told her. Whitney says, my daughter told me after a while that there was a sex room in the school. I told the school about it, but they completely shut it down and said she was lying. Anyway, guys, this is what's been going on in the UK. 250,000 of these, at least. 250,000 of these. And that's what AP says is the greatest country in the world. keeps praising how great the country is all of a sudden. Oh boy, crazy stuff, man. When governments fail, Romans 13:4, rise up, judge of the earth, pay back to the proud what they deserve. Psalm 94:2, the entire psalm is good. We've got give justice to the weak and the fatherless, maintain the right of the afflicted and the destitute, rescue the weak and the needy, deliver them from the hand of the wicked. The day of final judgment can't come soon enough. AP, will you ask Winston to sing your next song?
Yes.
That'd be cool. The timing of this after those Muslims defending 5-year-old pregnancies in that IP debate, this is all so dark. Jesus, come back quick. Yeah, I mean, think about that, guys, because even if they're not defending like sex trafficking and stuff, they still defend. I'm talking popular dawa guys and gals. They still defend sex with children, which means it's in their heads as children are perfectly acceptable sex partners. Opinion on Rohingyan grape gangs of Myanmar. Haven't looked into it. Why are the men's names censored? Make it make sense. This might sound like conspiracy theory, but this stems from World War II breaking the UK and going secular with hatred of Christianity. Their leaders welcomed this as necessary to destroy Christian heritage. Well, I said before, say what you want, for 14 centuries, Christians did not allow Europe to be taken over. As soon as things started going secular, hey, we can't invite them in fast enough. Keep in mind, I'm not talking about atheists. You got Christians who are like this now, right? It's just like a very watered down version of everything that destroys your common sense and makes you terrified of being called names. Dude, I'm serious. I'm new to faith. What do you do when you feel this level of rage? I'm literally shaking. I'm so mad hearing this. I've never been so mad. Then you figure out something that helps fix this. You don't go out and get stupid and go on a killing spree or go attack somebody or something like this. I prefer go after Muhammad or go after expose the UK government. Spread the information all over the place. It's good and proper to be enraged over this sort of thing, but channel that energy and that anger in a direction that will accomplish something positive. I joined late and was instantly disgusted to hear Chloe's story. Liberal leftists should be using her story instead of the fictional Handmaid's Tale. Yeah, they like the Handmaid's Tale. They like sharing that better. Chloe's mother is a piece of work herself. Horrible. And what's crazy is if you were to look into the history of Chloe's mother, her mother probably had messed up experiences when she was young too, and that's how the cycle goes. Christ have mercy on us, we don't deserve it. Real number is estimated around 1 million total. That wouldn't be surprising. The commensurate solution is an appointment with Davy Jones. Davy Jones Locker. I request 5 creative Quran Demolition Ranch episodes because of this. Luke 17:2. We've got, hey, Muslims, you better see what Jesus says about millstones. Reading all of these, somehow the human centipede doesn't seem like a bad idea. Oh, my goodness. Oh, yeah, if you wanted to make them do it, the rapists. Diversity is our strength. Diversity is our strength, UK government, yeah. It should be a requirement. It should be a requirement for the UK government. They have to stand there publicly, read each one of these stories, and right after each one say, and diversity is our strength. I just keep saying it until they understand how stupid they sound. All right, AP. Not sure you want to go through more of this, but there are tons more stories, and then they have their section on the connection to Islam and stuff, so we might want to continue with this at some point. But what are your thoughts here before we close out?
I don't think I have anything to say.
The evil and cowardice of the UK have actually silenced AP for the first time ever. That's saying something about how screwed up you are, because we hear screwed up stuff all the time, and AP still has a lot to say. And now he seems a little ticked off. All right. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. There's 2 links in the description. There's a link to AP's new interview with, what's his name? Winston Marshall.
Yeah, yeah.
Sounds like a politician, but from like 100 years ago or something like that. Or a general or something.
Dude, he's a member of that band.
I know, that's why they...
Mumford and Sons.
Oh, Mumford and Sons.
Yeah.
Wait, is he the guy that got in trouble a while back?
I don't know.
There was a Mumford and Sons guy who got in trouble like 5 or 6 years ago for saying some politically incorrect things.
That was probably him, wasn't it?
That might have been him. Okay, Mumford and Sons, man.
He's the former banjoist and lead guitarist of the folk rock band Mumford and Sons.
He's a banjoist.
Yeah.
Only one way to find out. We got to hear him play dueling banjos. Can we get a few more Quran pages ripped, please? Yes, you can. Normally don't like doing this just randomly on command, but... Hey, again, if this bothers you more than the stories we just read, if you complain about this, oh, this is Islamophobic, but you don't say a word about what happens to young girls around these Muslim men, see if you can figure out why we have this level of contempt for your stupid, dumb book. They really destroyed that country. How can you look in the mirror as UK authorities? Yeah. UK, man. All right, everyone. So we got the Mumford and Sons, interview with AP. That link's in the description box. And we got the link to the entire Grooming Gangs reports. Again, guys, I can't emphasize to you enough how easy it is to start sharing that stuff. Screenshot something, put it on social media. You can do that. It's a long report. You could do that 20 times a day. Get some information out there.
He's actually not part of Mumford and Sons anymore because he had to leave the band for his political opinions.
Yeah, I remember that dude. Yeah, I remember that dude. I don't remember what he said, but I remember people got ticked off on him. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching.
Here's the Quran. See?
AP's very hungry. Catch y'all next time.